Thank you again to everyone who helped make this April event a success. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to the attendees who came and joined in with some great questions. And thank you especially to Dan Fertig of BigCommerce for giving us some insight on the trends and some opportunities within the current economy. Be sure to check out the website, ecomatl.org, and sign up for the newsletter there. Check out the blogs. Also, head over to the Meetup page. Make sure you're subscribed there. All of our events right now are going to be virtual, but stay tuned for our next live event, which hopefully is coming soon. Now we're going to jump into the presentation.
And with us today as our presenter is Dan Fertig. I've been working with Dan for a few years and very excited to have him on. He's Global Director of Agency Partnerships at BigCommerce. Been there for, I think, probably coming up on 5 years now. One of the largest e-commerce platforms in the world. Dan is fantastic with the building of partnerships he's done inside there. We've really enjoyed working with Dan and his ability to bring whatever the most up-to-date strategies are for building things out from a partnership standpoint. And I know that EY Studios in particular had some recent success with working with him in trying to develop some best practices when the world changes very quickly, which was one of the really main points of topic that users were interested in, was to see how are e-commerce companies adapting. And we've been working with BigCommerce now for a few years. We've listed our iPass.com integration in the BigCommerce marketplace and are working on a buy online, pick up in store module. This is all part of trying to help retailers of all types move more quickly and more agilely toward the new normal, which with curbside pickup and the other just nuances and technical challenges that may have come up very quickly for businesses that may not have been ready to make those changes right away. But there are ways to get that done, and Dan will be sharing some of those with us today. So we're very excited to have him. Thank you so much, Dan. And if you are ready, we will pass the screen over to you.
I am. Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words, Jason. For those of you that haven't met me, Dan Fertig, I'll go through a little bit of an introduction about myself. But really quickly, in case you couldn't notice, I am doing this from my backyard at home here in Austin, Texas. I have 2 Texan-born children, worth noting for 2 reasons. Number one, my wife as a Brooklynite, it still bothers her that there's a chance our children will go to the University of Texas and not New York University. Importantly, I'm actually doing this from my back patio because it is the quietest place in my home with 2 very young children. So there's a very good chance that you may hear from one of those 2 monsters in the picture over there throughout the course of this conversation. I'll try to mute it quickly if that does happen. I'm sure it won't be the first conference or webinar that we've all been on where we hear dogs or children in the background. Really quickly, this is my second meetup, Atlanta meetup. The first one was obviously in person. I'm really excited to do the second one with you all and share a little bit about what we're seeing in our business, what our merchants are doing to navigate 2020 as a whole. And really quickly, before diving into some of those details, I am passionate personally about helping merchants be successful. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I myself am probably too risk averse to start my own business, but that's also why I have really grown to love the work that we get to do at BigCommerce and the merchants and entrepreneurs that we do get to serve on a day-to-day basis, both with our own product and through great partnerships like those partners on this meetup sponsorships with us. And for those that don't know me and I haven't met, I hope we get to do this in person next time. I look after the global agency partnership team for BigCommerce. And so a couple of folks on this call are on my team, and our responsibility is to make sure that great technology and agency partners have what they need to be able to deliver for our joint customers, whether that's revenue growth, whether that's beautiful design, marketing, technology, infrastructure, making sure all of those are in place for our merchants jointly. Hopefully you all probably should have asked this. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen and hear me okay. Probably should have asked that before diving into the screen share. For those that are not familiar with BigCommerce, won't belabor this point, but it is good context for you to understand where some of the tips that we talk about in the upcoming slides are coming from. The industry is what I like to believe is the industry's most versatile solution for advancing commerce experiences. So what do I mean by that? We are multi-tenant software as a service, so we do all of the infrastructure typically for a majority of our customers, except for those that are hosting with other partners like a Nexus for WordPress front ends or other third-party front ends. But what's great about the platform is that it's open software as a service. So you can customize the entire front end, and probably best reflected in the fact that across our 60,000 merchants globally, we have merchants that are just getting started in e-commerce and selling their first products online, and they're on the end of the spectrum of extreme usability. They don't want complexity, but that same underlying application is also being used by General Electric to sell locomotives and locomotive aftermarket parts. So that's probably what makes BigCommerce most unique, is the ability to serve both ends of that spectrum. 2 data points I'm just going to touch on because they are kind of the context behind the presentation that I'll dive into today. Is our average merchant growth rate historically, and this is third-party verified. That average growth rate is about 29% verified by third party. But worth noting that year to date, we're actually seeing merchants average growth of 48% across our platform. And so, these are times that call for real adaptation. And for many merchants, to be very clear, there is a struggle happening right now. There have been layoffs for many of them. E-commerce doesn't represent the majority of their revenue. So there's real struggle out there. But for those that are adapting, for those that are innovating, there is real revenue growth to be had. So I'll touch on, for the purpose of this conversation, the conversation around the customer journey, which is, if you think of the customer funnel, starts with acquisition, moves through conversion of that customer, increasing the lifetime value of that customer, and then developing brand advocacy, which is something that I think many retailers and brands overlook. It's not just about increasing the spend of that merchant, but are you actually creating a brand advocate, somebody who can go and acquire customers for cheaper? So to talk about this journey, I'm actually going to start by talking about soap operas. So this is where, if we were in person, I would ask the audience to raise their hand and say, who here knows where the term soap operas came from? There's probably somebody shouting the answer in their living room right now, but for the purpose of the majority of the people on this call, that actually starts with a story about Procter & Gamble. And so Procter & Gamble, when the stock market crashed in September of 1929, Procter & Gamble was not then what it is today as a brand. And so some very smart marketers at P&G, when the country entered a recession, they took a step back and said, what products are we offering? What can we offer that are resonant with customers today that they're still going to need to buy at the end of the day? And they led with those products. So think, things like Ivory soap, i.e. soap operas. You could probably see where this is going. And so what Procter & Gamble did was, by the early 1930s, rather than cut marketing spend, as did almost every other merchant and brand at that time, they doubled down on their marketing budget and actually started creating little serial television and radio shows targeted to their customer audience, which was their customer, which was the homemaker at that time. By the early 1930s, they released their very first radio show and their very first television show about a widow who was a homeowner who was looking to get by. This was so, customers were so receptive to these shows that by the late 30s, Procter & Gamble was actually one of the largest television and radio producers in the country. And so the notion of soap opera started by Procter & Gamble actually creating effectively infomercials for their soap, tied into and presented as a television show. And I thought that level of innovation was really, really cool. And it speaks to, almost 100 years ago, them innovating with radio and television. today, they're innovating in other ways, right? So the idea of Gillette, which is a P&G brand, selling subscription razor blades online, they use BigCommerce to do that. But delivering an entirely different customer experience that's innovative today in a way that they innovated almost 100 years ago that got them to be the company they are today. So I hope that story acts as a little bit of inspiration here, because this pandemic, while it is placing obvious risks, public health risks, as well as financial risks on our economy, there are boundless stories about companies that, whether it's Square, whether it's Airbnb, whether it's Uber, companies that have seen opportunity in the face of dramatic obstacles and use that as a springboard to grow. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually walk through a couple of examples of some of the smarter things that BigCommerce merchants are doing around acquisition, conversion, LTV, and brand advocacy. And my hope here is that actually spurs you guys to perhaps try some of these things out in your business, or think about, hey, what am I selling that's valuable to customers today that I can put in their hands more easily? Cool. So let's talk about acquisition. It's hard to start any conversation about acquisition without first talking about SEO. And SEO is really the best way to gain a competitive advantage at low cost. So what does that actually mean, and how do you get started if you're not thinking about SEO today? So we always recommend, and most of our partners will recommend the stage of research, right? Don't just presume, you actually need to do research. So what types of contents historically that you've tried are performing best? What competitive websites are currently ranking in search results? What types of assets are they providing? What information and what's different about them that's getting them to perform from an SEO standpoint? And what assets do you have? And that's not just content, but it's finding out what you can do to stand out and make your website special. Do you have a unique product? If you're selling model trains, do you have a special train that's really hard to get anywhere else? Do you have a special service package that you offer to your customers that makes you stand out? I think the notion of thinking of ways to differentiate your brand is best reflected in this quote by Lee Odin, a famous SEO strategist who wrote, "Marketers need to broaden their thinking when it comes to SEO. They need to create site content that answers users' queries rather than just trying to rank for particular keywords." It's really about understanding, how do customers want to shop? How do they want to behave? Where are they today? And how can you make your site most relevant to them so that they can find you more easily? The second notion that I'll touch on for SEO is around optimizing catalog and URL structures. So I'll actually share an example of a merchant on BigCommerce that's doing this really, really well, Berlin Packaging. So you'll notice here the way they organize even things like their SEO string, right? Clear plastic sauce, marinade bottles, cap not included. I mean, these are really specific URLs that will help them rank higher and make them more searchable and more relevant for buyers. You want to make sure that the category pages can support SEO relevant content. You want to be reducing content redundancies, and very obviously, you want to ensure mobile optimization of your site as well. If your site is not mobile optimized, it's worth mentioning, for the first time ever, by the end of 2019, more transactions occurred across our 60,000 merchants plus on our platform on a mobile device than they did on a desktop. And so you really need to be thinking about mobile optimization of your customer experience as well, whether you're selling to consumers or to businesses, because today's B2B buyer is, oftentimes a millennial who's not interested in faxing purchase orders. They're, interested in quick reorders, being able to search by SKU, all of that good stuff. So let's talk about paid advertising around acquisition. I'll risk playing a video knowing that my home internet speeds are not what I'd like them to be. I'll actually not play this entire video because it's close to 4 minutes long. But some very enterprising person at AdAge actually came to the conclusion that most paid advertising in traditional media, i.e. radio and television, thinks, looks, and sounds almost identical. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a couple of minutes of this clip, probably just 2 minutes. It's close to 4 minutes long. But, what I want to do is show you this and then contrast it with what we're seeing around digital. Because if you're thinking about traditional media and threading the needle between looking opportunistic, like you're trying to take advantage of customers, and looking too sympathetic and kind of patronizing customers, is really difficult to do. And I think that difficulty is reflected in this video. So I'll risk playing it. Oop. Let me see if I can get it to play.
When we first opened our doors.
Since 1926.
Since 1978.
For 60 years.
For 75 years.
For over 80 years. In 90 years.
For over 100 years. Nationwide has been on your side.
Restaurants have always been there for you.
Nissan has been with you through thick and thin. We will do what we've always done.
Take care of people.
We're people.
People, people, people,
People.
People, family.
Family.
family, family,
Family. Family.
Family.
Family.
Family. Family.
So you get the point. And I think we all, hopefully that sounded okay. I think we all felt this similar notion that, you know, when COVID-19 first hit and every company that you didn't realize had your email address started sending you emails about their response to COVID-19, that email, email blast from all of those different companies moved into television commercials. And there's this is a third of the way through this video. It's remarkable, and we'll send this out after. Highly recommend you guys watch it. You could find it on YouTube. Every COVID-19 commercial is exactly the same. I want to contrast this with what you as a brand are able to control through your own digital channels. So we'll talk about, you know, opportunities and where we're seeing growth from a paid advertising standpoint. But on the digital side, it is so different than what we're seeing on television and in this first wave of emails that all hit our inbox. And so what we're seeing certainly is, from an acquisition standpoint, certain verticals are dramatically outperforming others. This shouldn't be such groundbreaking news to those of you either not or are in these spaces. So things like supplements, home fitness, consumer electronics, office products, kids' toys, books, skincare, but not cosmetics. These are all industries that are doing really now. I mean, I've probably spent more on kids' toys to keep my kids, from being raised by Elmo in the last 30 days than I did in the previous 6 months. And so these verticals are really doing well right now. And what's awesome is that their CPMs are actually decreasing. The customer acquisition costs and the return on that ad spend, costs are going down and the return is going up, because so many brands, going back to the Procter & Gamble story, so many brands have pulled marketing spend that those that are marketing now are actually doubly capitalizing on the ability to acquire new customers. Conversions are starting to normalize, and I think consumers are spending so much time with digital now and accepting their new reality that they're starting to, even in apparel, actually, that's not just athleisure wear, we are starting to see rebounds in customer spend in those regards, right? So talk about a couple of different channels we're focusing on. Facebook, Instagram. For those of you that don't know, Facebook is actually offering $100 million in small business loans. If you're a business between 2 and 50 people, you're eligible for this loan. And I'm sure a couple of the partners on this call can talk about that, but you can find that publicly available. If that's something that might benefit your business, I encourage you to inquire about that. They have dedicated microsites built out for it. We're seeing much higher conversion across Facebook and Instagram. And so we definitely are starting to recommend those as channels where, 9 months ago, advertising was getting very expensive on paid social. we're starting to see return on ad spend come back in those verticals as other people pull their spend. Google and YouTube. YouTube screen time is up dramatically. It's a strong channel to attack right now. Many of you probably know this already, but Google shopping feeds, those listings are free now. And so you should definitely work with the experts, EY Studios on this call and others to help you understand how you can take advantage of that. But if you don't know, Google shopping listings are free once again. They were used to be free, then they weren't one day, and now they are again. Would definitely recommend taking advantage of that. As we know, so many the start of so many purchase funnels, begins with Google. Amazon customers we're seeing and hearing from our partners at Amazon is that consumers are really still, sorry for the noisy background, searching for essentials more than anything. And then worth mentioning, if you do have an older demographic, you should be thinking about investing in Bing advertising. A lot of that software, search software, comes preloaded on computers, and for an older demographic who doesn't proactively go and change their search, they're still using Bing, and customer acquisition costs on Bing are like a fraction of what they are on Google. So if you do have an older demographic as your target customer, we definitely recommend looking there. So let me shift gears into conversion. So a couple of things worth mentioning here, right? So you definitely want to merchandise to the moment. So if you're an apparel merchant, for example, focus on gowns, focus on, instead of focusing on gowns, right? Beautiful ballroom gowns and nightlife wear and cruise wear, focus on things that people are actually purchasing right now. Athleisure wear, lounge wear. If you're in the beauty and cosmetics business, focus more on skincare regimens, trying to incentivize people to sign up for subscription for skincare regimens rather than, high-end lipstick and mascara. Number two, be transparent about your shipping, right? If you're having inventory constraints right now, let merchants know. There's nothing more frustrating than thinking you're going to get something in 4 to 7 days and it doesn't show up for 14. So if you are having those constraints, be transparent. Most people we're finding are really understanding about those constraints right now, and they're willing to wait a little bit longer. We've all become slightly more patient with the brands we engage with than we have been historically. The expectation of I order something and by tomorrow it's on my doorstep, that has certainly eased. But important to remember, you should be utilizing back-end stock notifications if you're out of items. It's a great way to encourage email sign up. We'll notify you when we're back in stock of this item. And if you are having those inventory constraints, please make sure you're taking pre-orders, right? So if you're unable to fulfill orders or you've had to freeze manufacturing, strongly recommend you set up pre-order functionality so that when we do return to normal, whatever that looks like, and we're able to open manufacturing facilities with less restriction, you're able to get back to work quickly, employees are able to get back to work quickly, and you're able to service those customers and move product. Now is a really good time to consider your promotions, whether that's free shipping thresholds, whether that is your return policy. We're seeing a lot of merchants say, hey, historically, our return policy is 30 days. Obviously, it's gonna be really hard for you to return that blouse in 30 days to our store if we're not open. We're extending our return policy to 90 days, to 180 days. So go ahead and feel comfortable to order that blouse because, when you can walk back into our store 3 months from now, 5 months from now, you'll be able to return it if there are any issues in store. And then obviously consider offering curbside pickup. It's not just for restaurants. It's not just for big box retailers. The customer on the right is a big commerce customer, DeBruno Brothers. They're offering curbside pickup. So, we want to make sure this is something that you're considering. If you have brick and mortar location and you have inventory in those brick and mortar location and you want to reduce inventory in those locations, feel free to fulfill with curbside pickup. Really strong way to move product. And then really importantly, the blocking and tackling. These are so important to conversion. How's your search functionality? Obviously, Clearview is a partner of ours and a sponsor of this event. Very few in the industry, if any, are better at optimizing, merchandising as it relates to shopping and e-commerce. Make sure your shopping and your searching, is top notch. Page speeds, usability of the site, all critical to optimizing conversion. There are loads of UX experts on this call. When I'm done in a couple of minutes, we can hand that off to them if there are any questions around, what does that mean to have a good user experience. Shifting to increasing LTV. So somebody's come to your website either organically through SEO or paid advertising. They've made that transaction. How do we build that relationship? How do we get them coming back for the second and third and fifth purchase? So a couple of things that our customers are thinking about, and food for thought that I would like to share with you all. So number one, if it's a purchase that they're making, if it's a new customer and this is a new muscle for them to be purchasing your product, how are you going to stay part of their routine when that all changes? So I had a meeting this morning with a big commerce merchant who sells coffee, and their business is booming. Their direct-to-consumer sales are up 400% since end of January. The question, though, is that all of those people who are buying coffee from them today, when we do start going back into the office every day, when I can just purchase coffee from Starbucks on my way to the office, am I still going to go and brew my own coffee at home? Or am I going to go back to my old routine of picking it up on the way to the office, right? So thinking about things like for this merchant, I'm going to my next order. With each order, I'm actually going to send a branded mug, right? And a 25% offer order for the first 3 subscriptions that they get, because we want them purchasing again and again. So like, offering somebody a branded mug to remind them to continue to brew that coffee at home once they're able to go back to the office. That's just one example, right? Think about the apparel industry. I'm wearing jeans for you all today. You'll have to take my word for it. But increasingly joggers and sweatpants, that's what most people are wearing on most days these days. And what is that going to look like? Are people going to be continuing to buy trousers to go back into the office, wear suits to work? Most people haven't worn a suit in a very long time. Is that gonna be a permanent shift in consumer behavior? These are the types of things that you need to be thinking about now to be ready for next season's inventory line. Gift card purchases, right? So we're seeing merchants do this a lot, and it's really, really smart. They're actually sending gift cards with online purchases to be used in store. And the idea here is that whenever we all return back to normal, we're ready to welcome you with open arms into our brick and mortar location. Here's a $10 gift card for you to take in for free, for you to take into our store when we are able to open up our retail locations. Subscription, I mentioned it before, but it continues to play an outsized role in increasing lifetime value. Certain things that we're seeing as consumers, right? It's not a surprise, 30 million Americans have filed for unemployment. A lot of people are in dire straits right now, and they're taking a hard look at what subscriptions they have. What can we afford to keep? What can we afford to give up? And a lot of merchants who we know that are relying on those subscriptions are thinking about, how do I stay one of the subscriptions that they keep? So things like sending out an email that says, hey, with next month's delivery, we have a special surprise to you. Because if I'm sitting with my wife working on the budget today and thinking through all of my different subscriptions from Netflix to life insurance, what can we afford to give up? Because we have a very strict budget right now. If I know I'm getting a surprise next month or a free subscription next month from you, I'm less inclined to cut yours today. Email is killing it. People have adapted. People are responding to email. People are engaged with digital a lot as we're all stuck at home. And I know, certain states, Georgia included, are starting to open up. We'll see ultimately what that means for businesses, for consumers, for our health system. But I would urge you to think about SMS as a performing channel. We're seeing for many of our merchants, they're reporting 95% open rates and views for opt-ins versus half that number for emails. And so definitely be thinking about what's your SMS strategy, what's your text strategy. And then last but not least, this is really important. don't be afraid to show humanity to your customers. So I have the Jenny's ice cream example here, right? They're showing their employees. Like we're seeing merchants actually send videos of their employees reviewing their favorite products that the merchant sells. Like this is your time to increase your voice, to show your voice. Don't be afraid to be you, engaging with your customers, especially socially, because it's so easy to control that content and the message. And it's so easy to interact with customers, have a two-way customer interaction in the comments section. That might be difficult in an email. That might be difficult on your website. So strongly encourage you to think about what is your social strategy and what's the tone and what's the messaging and how are you going to present the best version of yourselves, the realest and most authentic version of yourselves in your social channels. And last but not least, and I know I'm up against the clock here, I'm about 30 minutes in and just a couple more slides here. Last but not least, developing brand advocates. So I am giving this example here. I started the conversation by showing you a picture of my family. I want to kind of end the conversation by showing this post from my wife to social media. My wife is an extremely private person. And in fact, she'll probably get mad that I'm talking about her on this call. She posts to social media a couple of times a year. It's incredible to think that of those couple of times a year, she posted to Facebook about an email she received from her insurance company saying, "Thank you, Geico. For some, this could be the difference between choosing between insurance and food." So what got her so excited? What got her so passionate about the message that Geico is sending? To better assist those impacted by the crisis, we're pausing cancellation of coverage due to non-payment and policy expiration effective immediately. We want our policyholders to have some peace of mind knowing we'll be there when they need us most. All right, this isn't a commercial talking about uncertain times. This isn't a cheesy Instagram post. This is, hey, we're actually taking action. We're there when you need us most. And you can bet that the people that benefit from this policy, you can bet people like my wife, who felt compelled to share this on Facebook. I would be surprised if she's not a customer of Geico for life at this point. And so you really need to be thinking, what am I doing right now as a brand to deliver real meaningful impact to my customers, to make them advocates of my brand. And by the way, in case you thought you had to be like a Geico with some massive financial, conversation about how that will happen, right? We're reducing loss of coverage. Geico is a massive company. They can think about how to do that. And by the way, insurance companies aren't exactly paying out a lot on, auto claims right now. And they're still collecting all of our money every month. And so they can afford to do things like say, hey, we're pausing for non-payment. I don't blame them for doing it. Really smart for doing it. For you all is, what's your version of that? How can you be creative with your customers? To provide a little bit of inspiration, I'll share this example from a BigCommerce customer, TCL, is based here in Texas. They're not Geico. They can't just say, hey, you can have free product. But what they are doing is things like live videos Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 4 p.m., giving fashion advice, talking about must-haves and to-dos, really engaging socially, and then giving promotions on their entire website for people who attend those live videos. And so this is, for me, as somebody who's passionate about helping small businesses and mid-market businesses and the underdogs of the world, this struck me as particularly inspirational. It's an example of a brand that has a couple of brick and mortar locations getting creative with how they're going to engage with their customers and really adapting to change. So if I can leave you with anything, it'll be this last slide. It's actually one of my favorite quotes. And I think it's the, I'll stop sharing and I'll hand off control back to Jason and team. But I think it's most reflective of where we're seeing the winners right now emerge. And it's about adaptability. The famous Charles Darwin quote, "It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one most adaptable to change." I think more than ever right now, that's actually being reflected in what we're seeing across our platform and what's separating the winners and the losers, those that are willing to think differently, those that are willing to challenge preconceived notions, those that are willing to adapt to how consumers are behaving today and move quickly.
Whether this is the first time you're watching this or if you're watching a replay, thank you sincerely for your attention. We hope that you gained some useful information here, and thanks again to Dan for providing such useful and timely content. Be sure to head over to the Meetup page and make sure you're subscribed to get all of the event notifications. Also, make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube. The goal is to get to 100 so we can name our channel, and feel free to share this out to anyone who might be interested. Thanks again. We'll see you at the next meetup.